overall view of the citizens of the United States was to stay out of World War II at all costs. Most remembered how bad World War I was and wanted to focus on home rather than fight another European land grab. There would be no gain for the United States or loss for more families. The problem is, the war was brought to the doorstep of the United States on December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor was bombed. It had finally hit home, literally. America must avenge herself. The U.S. war machine required manufacturing to peak to keep up with the demand. Not only were we in agreement with Britain and Russia for the Lend-Lease programs, sending tanks, bullets, guns, and resources to accommodate their needs, but the U.S. needed production of their own to take to the Axis doorstep. Out of all the U.S. servicemen and women in World War II, 39% were volunteers, 61% were draftees, and both would serve an average duration of 33 months, with an average of 16 months abroad. During combat, the survivability out of 1,000 troops was 8.6 killed in action, 3 died from other causes, and 17.7 received non-fatal combat wounds. There were non-combat jobs that encompassed 39% of the enlisted personnel, such as administrative, support, or manual labor. Women serving in the military. For the United States, women were not allowed to be in frontline combat roles, which were finally authorized in the early 2000s. From 1939 to 1946, there were many areas women could serve in the military. The Women Army Corps, or WAC. Navy's women accepted for volunteer emergency services, also known as WAVES. Coast Guard Women's Reserves, also known as SPARS. Marine Corps Women's Reserves. Army Nurse Corps, Navy Nurse Corps, Women's Air Force Service Pilots, also known as WASP. The roles these women played during their time in service proved vital, but what kind of roles did they have during World War II that made them so vital? Women drive trucks, repaired airplanes, worked as laboratory technicians, rigged parachutes, served as radio operators, analyzed photographs, flew military aircraft across the country, test flew newly repaired planes, and even trained anti-aircraft artillery gunners by acting as flying targets. These roles were normally filled by men, but with the volunteer and drafted men out of the country fighting the Nazis and Japanese, women stepped up to fill the void. Over the course of World War II, over 350,000 women served in the U.S. Armed Forces. Role changes. Prior to World War II, women were mostly homemakers. Those working outside the home were usually secretaries, receptionists, or department store clerks. As America enters World War II, men went off to war by the millions, and women stepped into the civilian and military jobs they left behind. The wartime economy created job opportunities for women in heavy industry and wartime production plants that traditionally belonged to men. This role change came with one of the most popular icons of the war, Rosie the Riveter. For most Americans, Rosie was a strong and self-assured woman that rolled up her sleeves and revealed her arm as she says, "We can do it." She was one of 19 million women who worked for wages during World War II, 5 million of them for the first time ever. Married women, many mothers, participated in the workforce during World War II more than their single counterparts. This was mainly due to having to take over as head of the household while their husbands were gone. Challenges. American roles of men and women had been around since before America became an independent country. Working women presented several challenges to most Americans' understanding of those proper roles. Women typically had clerical and service sector jobs and were now working in the industrial and wartime production plants in positions that traditionally belonged to men. Some men responded with harassment and resistance toward their female counterparts due to the male interpretation of completing physically demanding or skilled tasks as an encroachment on their work. Employers responded by paying females less than males and keeping them separated during the workday to preserve a measure of the pre-war gender order. Many Americans were also troubled by women who spent time away from the supervision of family and who earned their own wages. Especially for white, middle-class families, working women threatened to uproot the American idea of male providers, female homemakers, and caretakers. With victory comes limitations. Once World War II was over and victory cheers had ended, some women were more than ready to return to domestic life. But the ones that wanted or needed to continue working found their options severely limited as men returned home and the demand for war materials decreased. With the war over, employers couldn't justify the unconventional work of women, so they pushed women out of the higher paying positions they had held during the war, out of the workplace entirely, or into lower paying positions. Wartime proved transformative for many women who had embraced its challenges and its benefits. But personnel policies at the end of the war moved men and women back into the roles that aligned with the pre-war gender understandings. It wasn't until the Equal Pay Act of 1963 by President Kennedy to abolish wage disparity based on sex was signed into law on June 10th of 1963 that the old American ideals had changed forever. Thanks for watching War Machine. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.